So before I ever hit record, what I try to do with everyone is spend just a few minutes, and this is when I will use video if I'm recording remotely, just so there's a face associated, so I'm more of a human and less of a sort of robot interviewer at the other end who's somewhat dehumanized, is I'll try to do just a little bit of video, and I'll ask a number of questions, which include, so I'll say from the outset, this is a friendly, there are no gotchas, you have final cut. So if there's anything that you say that you want yanked out later, just let me know and we'll cut it out. And I encourage them, I say it's better to be excessively open and then cut stuff out, because I can't add interesting things in later. And this gets easier with time, and comes back to the question of guest recruitment, which we can touch on. So that's number one, is you have final cut, which they do for Inside the Actor Studio, by the way. That's where I got the idea. And secondly, I will ask them, what would make this interview a home run for you? So 3 months after this publishes, if you look back at it, what type of people would you want to meet? What actions would you like my audience to take? Is it book sales? Secondarily, is there anything else? Because I can put my machine behind it in such a way and position it in such a way to optimize for those outcomes.
And this is before you hit record?
Before I hit record.
Okay.
And almost no interviewers ever ask that question. Right? So they're like, oh, interesting. All right, thanks for asking. And then they lay it out. I'm like, okay, cool. So you want to do this, this, and this. Great. I'll take this link and I'll put it at the top of the show notes to increase the click-through rate, and A, B, C, D, and E. Next question that I always ask, it's not unique to you, but is there anything you'd prefer not to talk about, so that we don't even have to edit it later? Anything you don't want to talk about. So some people will say, I'd prefer not to talk about my son, or I'd prefer not to talk about my family, or X, Y, and Z lawsuit that everybody's fascinated by. I'm over it. It's just exhausting, and it's not that interesting or useful. I don't want to talk about that. Great, no problem. Won't even touch it. And those are a few of the questions that I ask, and then what I'll also do is I'll lay out the format of the show, and I will say, as a bit of context, so you know the roadmap. Typically, what I do is I'll bounce all over the place for the first 30 minutes. It's very non-linear, so we'll go all over the place, just like a natural conversation, with questions that are just of interest to me. Then we'll do probably 30 minutes of talking, asking perhaps audience questions, fans who have submitted questions, and also talk about your new project, like the reason you're doing this interview, whatever that is. And then in the tail end, we'll do my rapid fire questions, which I will very often send to people in advance so they don't get stumped. Some of them look, some of them don't. And then we'll wrap up and we'll do a call to action. I'll ask you what you would like everyone to do as suggested next step, and I'll record the intro later so that I can also hit your new book or your new fill in the blank. And then on top of that, I'll do A, B, and C to optimize for these outcomes you've already told me are really important for you. Sound like a plan? Cool. And then they're ready to rock and roll. And very, very few interviewers, and I've been interviewed hundreds and probably thousands of times. I could count on one hand the people who have gone through that prep process with me. Very rare. So you're immediately a standout. And what I'll sometimes volunteer also is that you have final cut. You and I have both been misquoted in the media before. It sucks. This is not a gotcha show. And so I'm also letting them know that I understand and have experienced what they have in some capacity. If they're concerned about something being cherry-picked and used out of context, it's like zero worries whatsoever. I ask them, and then there are things that happen before the interview ever starts, which is asking them for, say, preferred photographs and preferred bio, and if they have any requested talking points or subjects that they'd like to explore. Some people send things, some people don't, but I'm giving them the option. And so they know exactly, they have a very good feel for the terrain that they're going to encounter in the interview. So those are a few things that I use to put them at ease, which puts me at ease.